My earliest memory of Kraken is way back in 2015. And I wrote a story at Fortune after the Bit license came out. And you and Kraken were the ones who swiftly first responded and basically said, because of this thing being as restrictive as it looks, we're out. We're just going to leave New York. We're not going to do business in the state of New York. And it really waved a flag. It kind of set a standard that a lot of other crypto companies at the time followed. And if you fast forward to now, I guess I'd ask, do you think anything's better? How does the landscape look to you? And have states improved how they're approaching crypto?
I think most states have improved how they're approaching crypto. It looks like New York just wants to keep attacking crypto. This new stuff about mining, they don't like mining in their state, despite all of the positive evidence that it's doing a lot for sustainability of green energy and subsidizing the cost of green energy. It's bizarre, New York. I hope that there'll be a significant regime change at some point, and that the people of the state will demand their rights as cryptocurrency users to have access to this stuff. They've obviously missed out on a tremendous amount of possible wealth and gains through airdrops that they missed out on, ICOs that they missed out on, the ability to trade and invest in certain things. So, after all this time, I mean, if we just look back and did a study of kind of the economic damage done by the Bit license, I'm sure it would be tremendous in the billions of dollars. But other states are getting to be more and more open and welcoming of Bitcoin, and even seeing it as something that can create growth in their economy, something they want to attract to their state. See a lot of states offering welcome packages for miners and, for crypto businesses that want to come in. Wyoming especially has been leading the charge for a number of years on developing crypto specific regulation. So, I think the United States as a whole just is getting to be in a better place. There's more clarity and more support for crypto. New York still stands out as, the last holdouts, really, I think, who have the most hostile approach to crypto.
Hey, Jesse, it's Jeff here. I like that idea of commissioning a study on how much economic loss the Bit license has caused New York. So if Kraken or any of your friends commission that, we will happily write that up. But speaking of the past, I think, everyone knows Kraken, and when they know you, I mean, you're sort of an iconoclast. You've been sort of always really bold in your opinions and running the companies you see fit. But what I think a few people don't know, including me, is where it all began. So take me back to, I think Dan and I got into Bitcoin in 2013. When did you first encounter Bitcoin and crypto?
So this was back in around March of 2011. And it was just through some random article on the internet. I'm actually surprised I didn't find out about it earlier, given that I was in the virtual currency business for video games for, like a decade before this. So among my group, I was probably a little bit late to the game in 2011. But quickly went down the rabbit hole of Bitcoin. At first I thought this is great. This is like another World of Warcraft gold that we can sell on our website. And discovered that it was way more than that, something that could totally change the world. And, there'd been other ambitions for global currencies. There was like e-gold and, some other attempts at like a real pegged independent currency that ultimately all got shut down due to regulatory reasons. And it looked like Bitcoin maybe could withstand those attacks, and actually, was a way around the existing system. So I got pretty excited about that, philosophical implications, social implications. I knew from the virtual currency business and from my own experience with banking as a broke teenager that, that the banking system is pretty screwed up. I even had one instance where I deposited a check and they marked it as a debit on my account for some reason. Like the teller just screwed up, which caused my account to go negative, which caused like all of these other problems. And then basically there's just this massive process to get out of that. I had another case with PayPal where I had someone do a chargeback it was actually like my brother had sold something on eBay. Someone did a chargeback on him fraudulently. That got debited out of his bank account. He said, screw this. This is fraud. I'm not going to like pay this. You know, I'm not going to pay off this like negative charge, which is like a scam. So PayPal connected his account to my account through like my mom had visited both of us or something. And like she logged in from his IP and then logged in from my IP and connected our accounts. And so I had my account shut off because of his fraudulent like chargeback. So I've just had like all these negative experiences with the banking system, and then with the virtual currency business, we had all these problems with payments as well. You know, just the fees on microtransactions. Like, you know, if you're doing a credit card charge, it's like min 30 cents to charge something. So if you're selling something for $1, you know, it's automatically like 30% of that's going to the credit card. We had huge problems with chargebacks because of the digital goods. We couldn't prove delivery. It was often hard to authenticate or like verify that someone was a true owner of a card. We had clients all over the world who didn't have credit cards that were needing to send payments by Western Union or what's in cash in the mail. Or kids would steal their parents' credit cards to make purchases. And they were also like buying virtual currency from some suppliers, some gold farmers in China. And there are these monetary controls on China. And we were buying $100,000 of World of Warcraft gold every week. And each Chinese citizen can only convert 50,000 US dollars per year into Chinese yuan, which is what they needed ultimately to get paid. And so that meant every week we needed 2 new people to do this trade. And so over the course of a year, you know, you're over 100 people in this network of like doing this trade. So there's just all these ridiculous complications with payments in that business. And it seemed like pretty clear early on that like Bitcoin potentially could solve all these things. Like if we could just get our customers and our suppliers and everyone to just take Bitcoin, like all these problems would be over. You know, we wouldn't be worried about chargebacks, wouldn't be worried about transaction fees, wouldn't be worried about kids using stolen credit cards of their parents, wouldn't have to worry about the monetary controls capping the amount of exchange you can do. So I was pretty excited about that just real practical business application, solving real world problems of Bitcoin. And then beyond that was just all the philosophical implications of like, what if governments don't control the currency? And the more I started to learn about Bitcoin, the more I started to learn about the legacy, traditional financial system, fiat currencies, inflation, the way this whole system is screwed up. And I got to be even more passionate about just the great social good that could come of Bitcoin becoming the world's reserve currency. So that's kind of like how I first got into it. And then how I got into Kraken was like, you know, just another
just
exposure to
interrupt
Mt.
you for
Gox
one
in the early days.
I love these origin stories just because I think all of us have had those encounters with like horrible bank experiences or PayPal or online things, but most of us do not go and start a cryptocurrency exchange. So real quickly, take us like, you know, give us like the first month or first year of Kraken in a nutshell. Like, you know, were you worried it wasn't going to work? Did it take off right away? You know, how many people did you have? So give us a real short history of Kraken.
So yeah, we were in development of the exchange for like 1.5 years before we actually launched it. And we were actually delayed because in March of 2013, FinCEN came out with this guidance about virtual currencies and capturing cryptocurrencies under the money services businesses rules. So basically saying if you're doing exchange of cryptocurrencies, you're a financial services company now, and you need to be doing all this BSA compliance. So that's like the Bank Secrecy Act, which is anti-money laundering, know your customer, all of this stuff. So, you know, when we first got started, we were thinking, okay, maybe this is just like selling another version of World of Warcraft gold. Like we'll just put Bitcoin up on the e-commerce platform. It'll be right there next to WoW Gold and Diablo swords and whatever. And, you know, people just check out like anything else. But so the FinCEN guidance greatly complicated things and delayed our launch a while we built all this compliance stuff. So the earliest days it was like 5 guys, basically, me, my co-founder, and 3 other guys that we hired working on the core platform. in the earliest days, we had done some other dabbling in other areas too. We had a mining pool, and we were running some of our own miners. We had 5% of the Bitcoin network at one point, like all GPUs, which was a massive headache to operate. Things were constantly like overheating and switching off, and you have to go like turn them back on, and the switch was always getting like overloaded. And so like we sold off that business like after a while because just it was such a pain to operate, and actually sold it to some guy doing this like pen testing. Basically, you needed all these GPUs to like crack passwords and stuff. Who was also like mining on the side. So we like dabbled in that. We had this mining pool, but we thought like ultimately mining pools would probably become decentralized, and there wouldn't really be like a place for centralized mining pools. And so, we started to focus on the exchange pretty early on. We had the idea to do a wallet as well, but it was increasingly clear that like it was just going to be almost impossible to like get a bank account to have a real retail, like a reliable retail service. It's so hard to find banking partners, and it was like so hard to find even like venture capital as well at the time. So we were thinking like, okay, well, what do we know? Like, what's like really making money? And the exchange was one idea that we had in mind, and we thought we would eventually do an exchange, but we wanted to do that initially after the consumer wallet. But after Mt. Gox got hacked in, I think it was June of 2011, I went out there for like a week and a half to help them clean that situation up, and came away from that experience thinking like, okay, we definitely need another exchange like immediately. And they're obviously making a ton of money. This is like a profitable business today, and people are willing to wire money. The client base is more professional, and they're willing to wire money around the world. And it's not like something, we need to have a bank account in the United States to do ACH payments or something to have a viable business. So developing exchange seemed like a really important thing to do for the ecosystem as well. While Mt. Gox was offline for that week or so, everyone was freaking out. They were doing like 99% of the volume of Bitcoin. And so, merchants didn't know the price. It's clear like how important price discovery was to the market. Basically everything was shut down. Crypto, Bitcoin commerce was shut down when Gox was down. So we thought this was like a pretty important thing that we could do, and we felt like we had the background to be able to do it. My co-founder was a very super, extremely strong security guy, and also had been writing bots for markets and was very familiar with market structures and things like that. And we were coming from the virtual goods business. We understood a lot about marketplaces as well. So I asked him if he wanted to do it, and he was down. And so we kind of shifted our focus to working on the exchange. And shortly after we launched, Mt. Gox got hacked again in I think it was February 2014. So they were the only Euro Bitcoin before us, the only other Euro Bitcoin market at the time. And so we launched a Euro Bitcoin market before we launched a dollar Bitcoin market, because we just couldn't get a US dollar bank account. So the first bank account that we got was in Germany with Fedor Bank. And, we like went all over the world beating on doors to try to find a bank account. And they were the ones that finally gave us one. And, there wouldn't be a business without Fedor Bank. So I got to give these guys like huge props and credit for taking a risk on us back in the day.
And that's still an issue today, Jesse, right? Getting banked. We had Caitlin Long on the podcast talking about
getting debanked,
trying to set up legitimate banking services, for crypto companies. We're talking about 10 years later, and it just hasn't been fixed.
It's still tough. People are still getting their accounts closed for buying Bitcoin on, a regulated, licensed exchange. It's still a problem, and Caitlin and we are Avanti and Kraken, are still facing the same problems of actually trying to get this license, trying to get these Fed master accounts to do this. And there's not really a reason to withhold this from us, but they're dragging their feet. And For us, it's like we can only fight so many battles at a time, and we're fighting them all over the world. And it sucks that we don't have more resources, I think, to fight more battles at once. But, this is one of those things I think is, for us, it's not like we haven't bet the company on this license or anything like that. It would be nice to get it. I think we could offer a great service to people who are getting debanked around the world. We obviously understand the risks of banking crypto clients. But we'll see. We'll see what happens there. Maybe we need a different administration or different leadership in the government to make a change there.
Yeah, and we want to get into DC a little more in terms of fighting, but let's just stick with being an exchange. It's good to hear the origin story, because now if you look at the landscape, and putting aside even like DEXs and Uniswap, but even just centralized exchanges and Coinbase's size and kind of having gone public, and there's Gemini, there's Binance, which still says it's the biggest in the world. I mean, what is Kraken's lane? Where does Kraken sit nowadays competitively? What's kind of the value prop for someone's ready to buy some crypto? Why would they go to Kraken and not one of the others?
Yeah, it probably depends on where in the world you are. Kraken's definitely not the best place to buy crypto, no matter where you are. We have local payment rails in a few countries, but we don't have local payment rails everywhere. And if you're trying to buy $50 worth of Bitcoin, you certainly don't want to spend $40 on an international wire transfer to do that. And so, some people are definitely better off using local brokers. But like if you're in the United States, for example, or if you're in the Eurozone in Europe, or you're in Japan, we have local banking rails there. We have a great onboarding and super cheap and easy, onboarding flow that you would be used to in sort of like a Web 2 financial services app, where you can buy Bitcoin with debit card, credit card, ACH, all that stuff. So that's pretty easy. I think there are a lot of Bitcoin brokers and exchanges are kind of converging on a very similar feature set. I think ultimately it's going to come down to the best UX and being able to do more of what you want in one place. And, for us, we're really focused on the consumer experience. We started as a more professional platform focused on more advanced traders. And just in the last year have started to expand more into a consumer business, trying to onboard, the next billion users to crypto. So that's really our focus. We're really obsessed with having, the best user experience around that, just making it like super buttery, smooth, and simple for new people to get on, to join the crypto ecosystem. And we're looking for more use cases for them, So I think NFTs is along those lines. It's like just another thing that you can do with crypto. If you want to send NFTs around, if you want to participate in GameFi, you also need some ether, or you need some gas of some sort to do that. So I think the more use cases we can come up with and expose people to, the more sort of gateways we have for people to find their way to crypto, and hopefully eventually feel like they don't really need to have other currencies. If they need to hold Ether and Bitcoin, and maybe even USDC or Tether, that they don't really feel like they need to hold fiat currencies anymore, or even have a bank account at some point. And once we get into this mode of having this kind of closed loop where everyone's got Bitcoin now, so like we don't need to go back to the banking system. We can just completely transact in Bitcoin. I think that's where the world really starts to change.
Jesse, Dan wants to take us into NFTs in a sec. He's kind of our NFT guru, but I want to stick with the business of exchanges for a sec. I know just watching kind of Coinbase as a public company, a lot of the sort of bears are like, hey, trading fees are under strain, and that's where all the money comes from. Do you feel similar pressure at Kraken? Like, hey, everyone's cutting, trading fees. Maybe they'll be zero soon. We need other revenue streams. Is that an issue for you guys as well?
I don't really think there's like a lot of pressure on trading fees. I still feel like they're fairly low. I guess they could go to zero, but I don't feel like, when the price of something is moving 20% every day, I don't think people bat an eye at 20 basis points. So, I think people are still relatively insensitive to the fees. I still think there's, the fees are there for something, especially if you're you're buying Bitcoin with a credit card. You know, the companies that are processing that have to deal with a tremendous amount of fraud, and a major, you know, fraud mitigation operation in order to maintain their merchant relationships. So, you know, the fees are not for nothing, and I don't think anyone would want to go to, like, you know, zero fees on credit card purchases of Bitcoin. So I think we're a ways off from that. I don't see like a race to the bottom among the exchanges. I do think we want to diversify though, and I think, you know, you'll see that's how the other kind of major banks and big financial services companies make their money, is through these very diverse portfolios of products for people. So while they might have free trading or quote unquote free trading, you know, it might be they're actually making a spread on that because they're doing their own market making, or they might actually be making money on the margin trading, the loans that they offer you, you know, short term, long term, other financial insurance products or whatever. And you know, staking is getting to be a bigger part of our business. So you know, that's some diversification there. We have parachain auctions that we're running, which is sort of on the bleeding edge of crypto. And I think the NFT Marketplace is even going to be, you know, an additional, and could be a revenue stream that's even larger than the spot exchange. So got high hopes for that. So I do think you'll see more diversification, and I think you'll see these crypto exchanges all kind of converge on a very similar feature set that become the sort of like super wallet, like omni product app with, like, you know, NFTs, spot trading, FX, maybe even stock trading, maybe even some more extreme crypto stuff.
Ooh, stock trading. Maybe we're breaking some news here.
Yeah, I think we said before that it's something that we're exploring, and I think makes sense to do. You know, obviously you see Robinhood and Cash App starting to trade crypto, so I think you'll see crypto exchanges go back and add support for stocks as well.
That's awesome. Let's talk about that NFT marketplace. And you know, as Jeff mentioned, mostly I've just become fascinated with this because it's this subtopic within crypto that, for whatever reason, is so divisive, right? I mean, you've got companies all want to get in, and there's a lot of interesting kind of use cases that get discussed. And yet at the same time, a lot of non-crypto businesses find that when they try to just say, we're going to do NFTs, and maybe because they're cosplaying and they want to look like, oh, we're on the bleeding edge, they get a lot of pushback from people. You know, NFTs seem to really trigger people. So, you know, what's your take on where things are headed, especially knowing that since you started out in-game, you know, digital goods? I mean, you're the guy to ask here.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of cash grabs out there, and obviously a lot of rug pulls. So I think people should be aware of that. I think there's a huge propensity for people to just become hype driven and, you know, not look at kind of like the long-term economics of something or long-term viability of a certain project. And, you know, a lot of these are ultimately, you know, they're art or they're collectibles or they're memberships to clubs. And some of these things, you know, they have a value at a moment in time when there's a lot of attention on them. You know, even like sports cards or certain comic books. You know, when you know, Babe Ruth was alive, and maybe even for the generation after that, you know, people still knew his name, and you know, he was a legend. And you know, I think over time, people also just stopped playing and watching certain games as well, or certain shows. So. How many Gen Z kids care to own a Babe Ruth baseball card? You know, I don't know, probably a lot fewer than did, you know, 30 years ago. So, you know, I think some of these things, like, they have a time, and maybe they hold value for a time until sort of the collector base dies off or loses interest, or, you know, some of these things also have just kind of like an eternal marketing engine. You know, like I think something like a Disney or Pokemon NFT like would do really well, because these guys are going to be like putting money into these franchises, like, you know, for the next 100 years. And so they will still kind of stay in the mainstream awareness. But things like, you know, particular games, you know, games are replaced by new games all the time. And so I would be very wary of just accumulating a lot of wealth inside of a game. Even like I mean, if you just look at like World of Warcraft, for example, there's always this like power creep that happens, right? Like basically every item, including the game currencies, are like losing value like by the minute. And you're sort of getting this like utility value out of it, while you have it, you're using it, you're playing with it, you're killing monsters faster or whatever. But that thing is losing value because at the next patch, they're going to release an even more powerful item to make you keep playing, to have to like find the better thing.
It's like Apple products, planned obsolescence.
Exactly. Yeah. Planned obsolescence. And so like this power creep thing, is just how most of these games work. And, something that you have is probably not going to retain value, but that's how the game keeps people playing. And so I think people need to like understand those dynamics and the incentives. And I think there's just a lot of stuff that like seems like there's a lot of hype on it, but like you have to ask yourself, like, are people still going to be hyped about this like 2 years from now? And if you're buying the thing just because you want to kill monsters today and like that's all you want, that's cool. But like if you're buying it as like a long-term investment, like this is your nest egg, you got to be thinking on that kind of time horizon as well. Like, is that still going to be there in 20 years or whatever?
Or even as a short-term investment, right? Because a lot of it right now they're the PFP projects, it's Bored Apes or Moonbirds. What do you make of the newer stuff that it all seems to be about the flex and the being in the club? And I guess if you don't think the killer use case is in gaming, what would you tell NFT skeptics as to what the utility will be?
Yeah, I think with all of these PFP projects, it feels to me like, there's like a hot new club, or, these guys like these mattress sales guys that are always going out of business. And there's always like the last day sale or whatever, like the mega sale. And it's like you drive by 2 weeks later and it's like a different name, but they're going out of business again. And it's like the same sale. So I feel like these things are just like, they're hot for a minute. Everyone's hyped about it. It's hard to know. Some of it's just blatant. Like you see guys trading with themselves, like on chain, like selling their own NFT back to themselves at like 10 times the price. And some of it's like highly controlled. People are in these Discord groups, and it's almost like the ICO craze all over again in a different form. I think some are like totally legit and are great. Like, they basically memberships to clubs, and maybe you do get to go like on the yacht ride at the Bitcoin conference, every year or something like that, if you hold this particular badge that gets you on board. So I think there's some cool stuff like that happening. I think there could be some cool stuff in GameFi, but probably mostly like cosmetic. I think the plots of land thing is interesting, but again, it's like, is this the virtual world that's going to be the one that survives forever? Or, is this plot of land basically like, a plot of land in a city that's like, on a decline, and, at some point just like everyone's moving to the new city, and you're like, now your plot of land is worthless.
Well, Jesse, let's put it this way. Do you own any NFTs, and which ones?
I have a ton of NFTs. Yeah, I have a ton. Most of them, I started collecting NFTs as just like a way to collect cool art. I thought it was cool that artists were getting involved. And, this was like one of the first use cases for crypto that I saw. Like, the concept of colored coins was like an early thing in Bitcoin. And I'm surprised that it took so long for this to actually happen. And I can't like find the moment when this really tipped, but it was like somewhere around like when NBA Top Shots came out. I think like tons of people got interested in NFTs. And I thought the art thing was really cool. And artists, I have this nonprofit art center that I founded in Sacramento, California called Verge. And I know a bunch of artists from that, and I know kind of how much they struggle in life, to make a living and everything, and how tough it is to be an artist. And they usually have like side jobs to pay the rent and stuff. And so I thought it was cool that like, artists are now like getting into NFTs, and it was just cool to support some artists and just like buy a bunch of cool art, and try to encourage them to bring more artists like into the community. And so like I bought a bunch of those, just like one of one art, on Foundation and Super Rare. And and then I bought a few of the profile pics as well, just for fun. But I haven't gotten into the GameFi really. Yeah, I think the future of NFTs is probably more like certificates of ownership of real things, like consumables, like concert tickets. Maybe there will be some badges for club memberships. I think there'll be like certificates of achievements. So like, maybe your college degree or your high school diploma or your black belt in jiu-jitsu or whatever, will be like, you'll have the provenance like on the blockchain where you'll be able to see, someone like shows up at your jiu-jitsu dojo and they're like, hey, yeah, I'm a black belt. And, like, are you really? Like, let me see the NFT. Let me see like who gave you that black belt.
Yeah, Jesse, I'm loving this. Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but just, cutting through the noise of it and what's actually useful. But a related question, I mean, Dan, I like talking to people like you and like Eric Voorhees, the OGs, because you got the long perspective. But in terms of Web3, there's so much noise out there. Who do you listen to out there? Has anyone new kind of come up who you think's kind of the voice defining, kind of cutting through the bullshit in Web3?
You could probably take a look at who I'm following on Twitter, but I also follow people who I think are just like nonsensical and crazy because I like to have that perspective too.
But you got to tell us who's who.
Yeah, I haven't broken them out in a list. So, but I think Eric is great. I think Nick Carter. I think Suju is great. We probably look at the guys who are like working at the funds who are investing in this stuff. I think generally have like a pretty good perspective. The guys at Paradigm, Polychain, even Andreessen Horowitz, although I think they like to pump their own bags a bit.
Yes.
There's a lot of super smart people out there. Obviously I'm following, Vitalik and the Bitcoin Core devs. I don't know. I'd have to come back to you. There's probably like a long list of like, 100 plus people. There's a website called Hive.one that actually ranks the top like Twitter accounts for Bitcoin and Ether. So you guys should check that out.
Yeah, we, when we talk about what's happening right now and you look at Web3, as Jeff said, how it's become a buzzword. I mean, it's a little bit like what I was asking about NFTs, but I often find that I'm sort of sometimes defending the space to people. And even it's now, it was always that way that people who weren't in crypto would just say, I think it's all a scam or I'm just not interested. But now even within crypto, you've still got, I guess it's just interesting to me that the tribalism not only hasn't gone away, but now in some ways it has sort of grown. Like the latest thing is Bitcoin people trying to say, well, Bitcoin's over here and then there's crypto. We don't want to hear about crypto. Crypto is non-Bitcoin. And, especially from your perch at Kraken, you guys are kind of coin agnostic. What do you make of where things stand, I guess, culturally within crypto?
Yeah, we're definitely agnostic. We see ourselves as an exchange and, NASDAQ or NYSE, wouldn't exist with only Apple stock or whatever you think, Tesla stock, whatever you think the top stock is. We're all for choice of currency and we don't want to try to pick winners. I think we want to keep things that are like obviously scams out, but beyond that, it's sometimes very hard to predict. It's basically early stage, like seed investing, like venture capital, it's like these projects are so early. You can do your basic diligence and you can like take a guess, but it's like, 5 years later, like who knows, like they could be anywhere. And so, for us and, about the disputes in the space and, Bitcoin maximalism. And, I do think Bitcoin is in a bit of its own category. There are some other proof of work coins, but, I think it's very hard to launch a new proof of work coin with Bitcoin out there. And, I don't know if there will ever be another viable proof of work coin, after Ethereum makes the switch. And so, I think Bitcoin is a bit in a category of its own. And also because of the proof of work has this special thing about it. It's basically an energy coin, which the other proof of stake coins are not. And, so I think there's something unique about Bitcoin. And, I think if all Bitcoin did was just be a digital gold, that would be totally cool. But it looks like, with Lightning Network and with, there's some other cool things happening, with side chains and stuff that maybe will allow more stuff to happen on top of the Bitcoin network. And I think all these other coins are doing interesting things too. And it's great to have this like playground and laboratory where like things are being tested, and, those things can always be like reincorporated back into Bitcoin. However, one other great thing about Bitcoin is that, it's like very stable. There are not like a lot of major changes happening. The core devs are just extremely cautious about making changes. And I think that's great for Bitcoin. I don't think everything has to be like that, but I think that's a differentiator of Bitcoin, that it's so cautious that it's something you can think about. Like Bitcoin's probably still going to be Bitcoin like 10 years from now.
Jesse, I can't let this slide without asking you, do you think the Ethereum fork is going to work? Because I know Ethereum's got lots of great devs.
The merge.
Got Vitalik, the merge. I'm sorry, the merge, not the fork. But, it just seems so much is riding on that. And it's just like, it's like waiting for Godot. Like every year it's going to happen, then it doesn't. Every quarter it's going to happen, then it doesn't. So, and should this make, ETH holders nervous?
I don't think it should make ETH holders nervous. I mean, if anything, it's probably better that it's taking longer, that it would be more well considered and perfected by the time that it actually comes out of the oven. So I wouldn't be concerned by that. I mean, and then like, what's the rush? I think it's doing okay as is. And, I wonder if there'll even continue to be a proof of work Ethereum fork that survives. So I don't think people should be worried about it. I don't have a strong opinion about it. I'm not following like the technical nuances of why it's like, constantly delayed and stuff.
Yeah, that's wise actually, in terms of like one thing that should not be rushed is major blockchain changes. So I think that's astute. Dan's going to take us to the end in a minute, but before we go there, I want to ask a completely different subject, something kind of close to my heart. I used to live in San Francisco. I love California. I have family there. I saw Kraken closed its office there because it's too dangerous. And I get it. I mean, I've walked through parts of San Francisco, and it is kind of a hellscape. Yet some of the crypto people on Twitter are sort of caricature the whole state as this like, terrible hellhole. But, I don't think it is. Like, I still see a lot of innovation. I still see a lot of great people there. So, like, I mean, are you ever conflicted? Like, you're a native son of California. Like, how do you feel about your home state these days?
I lived in California for a long time, and I lived all over the world, and I keep coming back to California. There's definitely a cost of living here. It's not free. I look at it as like the price of being in the club. And, if you want to have like great weather most of the year and all of this stuff, like, fresh produce and lots of interesting people around, it's like part of the price. So I cringe whenever I pay my taxes, but, I think like, okay, I'm still like the trade maybe still seems like borderline positive, but it depends on where you live. If you're living in like the Central Valley, I would say it's probably not worth the check that you're writing. If you're living on the coast, maybe. But San Francisco has fallen quite far. I first moved there around 2013, and it was a very different place than it is today. It was much safer. It was much cleaner. And since then, I've just seen it deteriorate. I used to live 12-minute walk from the office in Soma, that's south of Market. And, every day it was like playing hopscotch over human feces and used needles and guys with machetes. And, it's just gotten to be an extremely dangerous place. And you can't leave your car parked on the street for more than 5 minutes because someone's going to break into it, whether you have something or not. We had someone at the office, their car was broken into and they had nothing in it other than the car manual. So, whatever, $80 window replacement or something, to actually, there's a shortage of glass now in San Francisco. I don't know if you know this, because of all of the break-ins. So it's gotten to be even more expensive to deal with this. So crime has just run rampant. The DA there has this catch and release program. I mean, basically, he feels like his worldview and his social agenda is that if you are committing crimes because you have been oppressed somehow, or you've been discriminated against somehow, you're poor, you're an immigrant, whatever, that is the reason for the crime, and prison is not a way to solve that. Prison is not a justified response to that. Unfortunately, prison also is a pretty useful deterrent for crime. And, while I agree with, that's probably not the best way to handle these cases, ideally some kind of a process of rehabilitation or, education and all of this stuff. Ideally we'd have these programs in place so we don't have to send people to prison. But in the absence of that, prison is a strong deterrent, and that's basically off the table now. You see that if you follow the San Francisco Police Department's Twitter account, it's like all the time they're like, arrested this guy for the 14th time. He's a prolific car thief. We'll see if he gets indicted this time. And like next day, arrested guy for the 21st time. This time he actually ran over a pedestrian with a stolen car. Well, too bad the DA didn't do anything like on the 5th time he did that.
Yeah, I feel you. I mean, I love San Francisco, and I just think it's a shame what's happening to parts of it because, I believe in social services, education, and healthcare, but I think safety is a service too. And I think, this people in San Francisco feel kind of gaslit by when it's like, no, everything's fine. I'm like, I'm not sure it is. But let's talk about happier things. Let's go back to coins and crypto and blockchain. I think Dan's got a good question for you.
Jesse, we have an array of sort of fun final questions that we sometimes choose from. So let's do this one. Especially, we talked about being basically coin agnostic if you're operating an exchange. But just quickly, what right now are your 3 favorite, that you think are the most interesting projects? Might be tokens, might be blockchains, could be an NFT thing, but 3 things that you're watching that you think are really cool and interesting in the space.
Well, I'm watching the Lightning Network closely. I think this is super interesting. I'm watching the development of the NFT space, especially Bored Ape Yacht Club and Yuga Labs. And, I wonder when they're going to take this thing too far. And if the music is going to stop, like at some point, it seems like they keep like parlaying this thing like over and over. And, I bought one of these apes at like 2 Ether, and it's already returned like 100 Ether and like airdrops or something crazy like that to me, and I'm just like, can this go on like forever? So I'm wondering about that. And I don't know, a number 3 thing, CBDCs are kind of interesting.
Sure.
I'm hoping that, we don't end up in a total surveillance state with, governments controlling all our money.
Well, speaking of stable coins, Terra Luna, is it too good to be true, or I just don't know what to make of it? I mean, they're obviously hardcore and they're doing it, but that 20% interest is a giant red flag.
Yeah, I think that stuff, any kind of interest rate like that is a red flag. I think there are some people willing to just get crazy leveraged and borrow at crazy rates because they're degenerate gamblers and they think, well, Bitcoin's going up 100% next year, so like why not borrow at 20%? But I think that stuff is hard to sustain. Again, I think people have to look like long term, and a lot of these projects are they grow quickly when they're paying these rebates. Basically, there's some reward. This vampire attack thing where it's like even the exchanges you see, like volume's growing, but it's not like it's not growing naturally. It's growing because it's like subsidized somehow, like they're paying people for that volume. It's sort of like, there was some exchange that called it like trans fee mining or something like that. So it was like the more volume that you created, like the more you got paid or something. And like, they were just trying to game the volume rankings of exchanges. So you have to be like, just conscious of these like market dynamics as well and the incentives that are out there. And like some of these things seem like they're growing like crazy until you realize that, wait a minute, they're just like paying, like $100 for every user that signs up. Like, of course they're growing. Is anyone actually going to use this when they stop getting paid? Like, who knows?
Or just selling their own NFT to themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's good advice. It's good advice to end on. I mean, Jesse, we could talk to you all night, but thanks so much for joining GM. Keep us abreast of everything Kraken is up to, and we'll check back in with you soon.
Will do. All right.